Hello guys, it is Christine. Today we are Today I cannot speak. Today we are tackling the topic of homeschool myths. If you're new here, or you may have not heard this before, although I have said it many times on my channel, I was homeschooled for a lot of my education, so I feel like I kind of have an upper hand in this area because I've heard most of the homeschooling myths that are out there, and I don't care about them anymore. Like, it doesn't really, I just laugh when people bring things up because I know how ridiculous they are. So I've kind of got like an advantage when it comes to homeschooling my own kids because I just don't care. I know homeschooling works. I've been through it. Anyway, I had a great positive experience. So if you are new, this is your first time, I have 3 kids. I'm homeschooling my eldest now. He's going to be 5 really, really soon. And I share homeschool content. So if that is something that you would like to see more of, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you here. And I'm going to talk about some of the most common myths of homeschooling, and we're kind of just going to go through and debunk them because there's a lot. I narrowed it down to 10, but there's a lot, okay? Number 1, okay, and if you are a homeschooler, have been homeschooled, there is no way you would not have heard of this myth before because it is the number 1 myth about homeschooling. How are your kids going to be socialized? Homeschoolers lack socialization skills. No. It's just the biggest myth out there. Well, actually, no. I think the biggest myth is that by sending your children to school where everybody's the same age as they are, or pretty close, they're going to improve their socialization skills. That's not true socialization. It's forced socialization. It's not true socialization. So homeschoolers actually have a much greater advantage in this area because typically they're spending time with people of different ages, whether that's their siblings or they go to co-ops or they're just like out in the community. You're spending time with people of all different ages, which is actually a much better way to socialize because it's much more like the real world environment. I mean, think about it. When you leave school and you go get a job, you're not working with everyone like the same age as you. That's very, very, very rare. You need to know how to socialize with people of all different ages. And I don't know about you, but for me personally, I want my kids to be learning their socialization skills from people who have already kind of mastered it, like adults, for instance, and not necessarily other peers their own age. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't spend time with kids their own age because that's kind of important too. But homeschool kids tend to know how to speak confidently and respectfully to people that are older than them as well as people that are younger than them and their own age. So biggest myth, and it just always makes me laugh because especially when, I've had it from people even recently, because I didn't send my son to preschool and they're like, well, how is he going to learn how to socialize? I'm like, he talks to people all the time. He's not, all kids are a little weird, but he speaks respectfully and he is far more outgoing and confident than I have ever been. He is an extrovert. I am definitely an introvert, and he'll just go up to kids' parents on the playground and start up a conversation with them. And it's not in a weird way. It's he just talks about stuff. So I don't understand when people ask that. It's like a question people ask and they don't even think about it. Number 2 is that homeschooling parents are lazy. I've heard this a lot, that parents just take their kids out of school because they're too lazy to take them to school. And I'm like, no, that's just not, because if you were, okay, I don't want this to come across the wrong way because I don't think you're a lazy parent if you send your kid to school. That's not it at all. But wouldn't that be the more obvious choice if you're a lazy parent? You want someone else to be looking after your child for a good chunk of the day? No. Homeschool parents are typically not lazy. They work really hard to educate their children and to create an environment that is loving and conducive to learning. They're not lazy. There's obviously going to be the exceptions, but the vast majority of homeschooling parents are very hardworking. Number 3, homeschool parents should be qualified to teach. This is actually something that I've heard quite a lot, and it was very timely because there was a thread that came up in a homeschool Facebook group that I'm in where a homeschool mom asked if there were any other homeschool moms in there who were qualified teachers, and did they feel as though it was of benefit to their homeschool. And I will tell you that 99% of them came back and said no. They actually felt it was a disadvantage to them because their degree mostly focused on like classroom management and teaching like bigger groups of children. It wasn't so much focused on like actually teaching, if that makes sense, like education in and of itself. And I once heard an argument that like if you come through the public school system and you can't then pass on that knowledge to somebody else, i.e. a child, then the public school system's failing you, because you should be able to teach what you've learned, you know what I mean? So no, homeschool parents do not need to be qualified to teach. If you are a parent, you are qualified to teach your child. Now, there's going to be areas where you might need to outsource. For instance, my mother never took high school math, and so when it came to like higher levels of math, we had a math tutor that we went and saw once a week. It wasn't a big deal. So you just use your discretion, but no, you do not need a teaching degree. Number 4, homeschoolers just stay home. No, although we stay home a lot, but that's just because I just don't like going out, and it's not like I'm scared of going out. I just like being at home. But no, homeschoolers do not just stay home in like a cave and never see anyone, hence the myth about lack of socialization. No, homeschoolers go out a lot. They're often very, very busy. When I was being homeschooled as a child, we were out in town. We would go to the library. We went to like a homeschool sports co-op kind of thing. I had drama classes, dance classes. My brother did cadets. Like, we were involved in a lot of things. So I know I'm just using my family as an example, but most homeschoolers are like that. Number 5, homeschool parents neglect their children. Again, I would say that yes, some homeschool parents probably neglect their children, but just like how some parents neglect their children, the vast majority of homeschool parents do not homeschool in order to neglect their children. And it's actually really sad, because there have been a couple cases in the States now where there have been children in horrific condition have been neglected and abused, and it just so happened that the parents also homeschooled them. And unfortunately, because of those cases, it's putting much more stringent restrictions and things like that on other homeschooling parents, and it's kind of ruining it for people. So that's awful and it's horrible. But no, most homeschool parents are very loving, and that is why they have chosen to homeschool. They're putting in the effort to do that. In a lot of states, you have to be monitored as well. Over here in New Zealand, they used to come and check on homeschooling families, and then they actually stopped because they found that it was a waste of their time and resources, because homeschoolers were doing such a great job of looking after the kids. It was just like, well, this is pointless going to visit them all. Like, it's just wasting our time. So that was very interesting. Number 6, homeschooled kids struggle to get into college. No, this is a myth. I mean, like, we did have to put together a transcript, and sometimes you have to do things a little bit like differently to a child who's come from a public school setting or a private school setting, whatever. But no, I didn't go to university, but I went to Polytech, and the process was like the same. And I qualified with a Bachelor of Nursing. My brother went into the Army and qualified he's got his trade in mechanics. And my sister did a chefing course through a Polytech. My other sister has she didn't go on to tertiary education. But like none of us have had issues with going on to tertiary education or getting a really good job. So it's a myth. It is a myth. There's plenty of homeschool students who end up going through university or college or whatever. Number 7, homeschoolers miss out. I mean, yeah, sure, we miss out on some stuff, but we also get to do a whole heck of a lot of other things that school kids don't get to do. So there's not much that homeschoolers miss out on now, because a lot of schools will let you attend their proms, will let you go to their sporting events, like join sports teams and things like that. I even know of a mum who has her kids like part-time enrolled in a school just so they can take a few like elective classes. So I think maybe once upon a time this was the case, but it's far less of a thing now. Like, homeschoolers have, I would say, just as many advantages as children who are in school. Number 8, all homeschoolers are religious. No, I would say a vast majority probably are, but there is a growing number of secular homeschoolers out there now, for sure. Absolutely. Number 9, homeschool moms are saints. No, and I know that this myth drives homeschool moms crazy. We're not perfect. We're far from perfect. Our parenting is the same as your parenting. Yes, we're with our kids a lot more, but that does not mean that we are like have endless amounts of patience and that we're perfect mothers. No, heck no. Okay, we're just like you. It's just we're choosing to work on it, okay? And we're choosing, like, for me personally, I choose not to let that be my reason for enrolling my children into school. Like, I don't want my lack of patience or my imperfections as a parent to be like, well, this is why you're going to school, because I have big issues with our school system, and it's not something that I ever want to subject my children to, and therefore I would rather make the effort to work on myself. But that doesn't make me a saint, you know? Like, I'm not perfect. I yell at my kids. I lose it sometimes. I'm impatient, and I'm imperfect. But I also want them to see that, because I think that's really important. It would be really hard for your child to have a perfect parent, because could you imagine the pressure that would put on them as they're growing up and then have to become a parent? No, okay? Not the perfect parent. I often even think, like, from a Christian perspective, God is the perfect parent and his kids still rebel. So there we go. Number 10, homeschoolers aren't part of the real world. I actually would argue that homeschoolers are more part of the real world than kids who are attending public school. And I don't mean that to come across as offensive. It's just the honest truth. Homeschoolers are in the community a lot more, have more opportunity to be part of, like, regular stuff. I know that I was able to get a job at a very young age. You start to see the world and how it runs at an earlier age. It's just the nature of being in a public school, is you're just all together and it's a collective and you're all doing the same thing, and that's not what the real world is like, you know? And yeah, I think that homeschoolers actually have more opportunity to see the real world. So those are my 10 homeschool myths that I have hopefully debunked for you. I hope it wasn't, like, offensive to anyone who is not a homeschooler. I don't mean it to be that way. It's just that these are things that get said all the time, and there's just zero truth or foundation to them. So it's worth talking about. And hopefully, as I think more and more people are homeschooling around the globe, it is less of a thing, although there are also more restrictions being put on homeschool families, unfortunately. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful and entertaining, and I hope that you'll join me next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.
What if the world had more of your smile? What if the wind could spread your love? What if your sweetness could reach everyone? There'd be no wars.